So, in 1983, NASA announced that there appeared to be a large body beyond the realms of Pluto, which was as large as the planet Jupiter. It had been detected by IRAS, NASA's infrared telescope that had been set up only months before. The headline spread like wildfire, with many newspapers carrying the story. In Europe, the story also ran, and then suddenly, NASA pulled the plug on the story, and all of the American newspapers went silent about this mysterious object that had been detected in the deepest part of our solar system. NASA originally named this object Planet X, although it has also recently been renamed as Nemesis, and there are now accepted scientific theories that point to this planet or body being responsible for many of Earth's cataclysms, including the extinction of the dinosaurs. Many astronomers have always believed that there was a missing planet in our solar system, and Planet X, or Nibiru, or also Nemesis, whatever you'd like to call it, cannot be dismissed as readily as NASA would like. So tonight I'm going to be talking about Planet X, which was known to the ancients by many names, but the Sumerians called it Nibiru, and we'll be discussing this along with many other issues tonight with my guest Anne Eller. We're going to be talking about some very serious issues as well tonight, so I want you to sit back and enjoy the show, because this is going to be a great one. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Anne Eller. Anne, welcome to the show. Hello, Anne, are you there? Anne, can you hear me? Okay, well, it looks like we've lost the call, so what we'll do is we'll go to a break and hopefully...
Yes, I am.
Hi, well, welcome to the show. Thank you. We seem to be having some... Yeah, well, I'm really excited about having you tonight. We've obviously been exchanging quite a few emails, but this is our first time really talking on the phone with each other, so I'm very excited about that. So just, I mean, you might have missed some of the introduction. But I just wanted to just also let the audience know, you know, this is a new radio show, and we're here on Peterborough FM, which is a community radio station. And, you know, in the metaphysical and New Age community, we talk amongst ourselves in almost another language, because there are so many concepts that we have reconciled with ourselves over the course of our lives as being true. But for others, well, they are miles away from what we believe. So when I decided to start this radio show, I deliberately wanted to get out of the safe zone and take this information to those who may be ready to hear, but just haven't been exposed to this type of information yet. Because, you know, obviously, Anne, as we both know, there are some very important things happening here on the planet at the moment. You know,
that's for sure. In fact, just about an hour ago, there was another very large earthquake.
Right, where was that?
Just northeast of New Zealand,
right,
in the Kermadec Islands. It was a 7.9. But the USGS is dumbing down all of those numbers.
Yes.
So we can assume that it was at least an 8.4.
That's right. And I think I actually recalled with the Japanese earthquake, they did the same thing, didn't they? They said it was like an 8-point-something, and then finally they admitted it was about a 9-point or something, you know,
yes,
it was a bit higher than what they had originally said. Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, you know, the Western world, you know, through its economies is collapsing, and I know a lot of people think things will go back to how they have always been, but we are moving into a brand new cycle of time, and, you know, with the information you've just given me this evening, it's definitely speeding up. Things are speeding up with great force. And also, you're in Arizona, aren't you?
Pardon?
You're in Arizona, aren't you?
Yes, in Sedona, Arizona.
In Sedona. And I heard about, you had, I think it was yesterday, did you have a big dust storm or something?
Well, it's the monsoon season now, and we've been getting really heavy rains, and we had hail that was about the size of a $50.
Right, so it was very abnormal, let's say.
And we also had a very good UFO sighting the night of the 4th of July.
Right.
Over in Cottonwood. Some people saw it, and they were so excited. They're drawing pictures, and they're reporting it to all the agencies.
Yeah.
And we also had a sighting of Bigfoot here a couple of weeks ago.
Right. Okay.
So we're getting a lot of activity over here.
It seems like there are more and more sightings going on. I mean, I know there's always been lots of sightings. People always seeing UFOs and having, you know, experiences. But would you say that they have increased probably in the last couple of years?
Yes, definitely.
Quite dramatically.
Mm-hmm. And that's on purpose. They're showing themselves to larger groups of people for longer periods of time now. because it's getting ready. I mean, it's time for us to accept that we're not the only ones in the universe.
Yes.
And it's time for us to begin our interaction with our neighbors throughout the galaxy. I think it's one of the most exciting times you could be alive on the Earth.
Well, as they say, we've chosen to sort of be here at this time, and I know there's quite a lot of people on the planet currently, so,
Yes.
you know, I think the problem for many of us who, you know, we've been into this information for many, many years. I mean, I've been into this information since I was a kid. It just came very natural to me, and I've never questioned the fact that we're not alone, or, you know, with all the different subjects that are out there that you can research for yourself and educate yourself with. It's just been so natural for me, but not everybody has had that road. So I think so many people now are going to be coming into a time when they're seeing things happening and they can't quite explain it, but it even makes them they might even feel quite uncomfortable with it. You know, it's unsettling for them. You know,
one thing that they need to understand is that this is a very unusual period of time. It's very unique because we have many cycles coming to a closure now at this time. We also have the aliens that are here to help us, and we also are beginning our ascension into the fourth and fifth dimensions. This is a spiritual ascension that's taking place, and at the same time, Planet X is coming through our solar system and is going to cause a pole shift here on the Earth as it passes. So because it's quite close to us already, this is why we're getting more and more earthquakes, stronger earthquakes, more volcanic eruptions. And we can, if you want me to go into the Planet X, we can talk about that now.
Well, what I'd like to do, Anne, is actually just start with your beginning, and I'd like you to discuss with us your work with Dr. Ellen Hynek, and I definitely want to get into Planet X. I want to make sure we have plenty of time for that, because I really would like to speak about Planet X, and also what you were just touching on there briefly about the shift in consciousness that is now taking place here on the planet. So I want to make sure we have enough time for that later in the show. So why don't you just tell us a bit about how you, because many of the listeners may not have heard of you before, but many might have as well. So just briefly sort of explain to us how you came across Dr. Hynek and how you began working with him.
Okay, sure. I started having UFO dreams in 1976, and I had them night after night for 4 solid years. And it almost made me crazy. I didn't know what was taking place, and I started reading everything I could about UFOs and aliens and talking to anybody that would talk to me about it. And in everything I read, in every conversation I had, there was one name that kept cropping up, and that was Dr. J. Allen Hynek. Because, excuse me, he was known as the father of UFO alien research. And he was the man that was hired by the United States government and military to debunk all the sightings that they were having. They didn't want the public to become concerned with this at all. They didn't want us to freak out about aliens being here. But anyway, I thought, well, he's got to know the answers to my questions. So I wrote him a letter, told him about the dreams, and sent it to him. And I didn't hear a word from him for 9 months. And then one night the phone rang. And it was him, and he said he had just found my letter under his desk. Now, after I got to know him better, that was kind of typical. He was a little bit of an absent-minded professor.
Very typical of a scientist, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, and didn't keep the office very neat.
Yeah.
So he said he was interested in the dreams and wanted to know if I had kept a log, and he wanted me to tell him about them, so I did. And I sent him a copy of the log, and then I never heard another word. So this was in 1980. So in 1985, I was a nurse working nights at the hospital, and I came home one morning and opened up the newspaper, and on the second page, the headline was, Dr. J. Allen Hynek brings UFO research to Scottsdale, Arizona. Well, I couldn't believe it. It was literally in my backyard. So I thought, well, this is definitely an omen. I have got to go over there, and I've got to be involved. So that's what I did. I volunteered my time for the first 3 weeks and set up the office. And then Dr. Hynek asked if I would come to his office and set it up and be his personal assistant. So I said, well, I absolutely would. I thought it was an opportunity that only comes by once in a lifetime. And so for $100 a week was all he could pay. I went to work for him full time. And that was during the last year of his life. It wasn't too long after that he was diagnosed with prostate cancer.
Yes. Yep.
So that's how I got involved in the UFO research part of it. So the year that I was with him, I met a lot of the researchers. I talked to an awful lot of the experiencers, the people that were being lifted and were having experiences with aliens. It was just fantastic.
Yeah, I can imagine.
The most exciting thing that year was when he sent me to a UFO conference in Wyoming.
Right.
And I was visited by a very large group of female extraterrestrials. So that was extremely exciting, and that has totally changed my life.
I want to get more into that story because I've heard you speak about this story before, but I just want to backtrack slightly because you've got lots of details there, and I want to make sure that we're picking up on all of them. Now, with Dr. Hynek, as you said, he was the main person that was brought in by the United States government to debunk anything related to UFOs. I mean, in terms of his own personal views, how did he feel about all of this? Was he a believer? I mean, or was he a very, like a typical staunch scientist?
Well, he was an astronomer, excuse me, and an astrophysicist. He was very much a scientist, and he didn't really believe that these vehicles were extraterrestrial in the beginning. He thought perhaps they were from another country, perhaps Russia.
Or maybe Germany, because I know supposedly Germany had been doing some experiments. Yeah.
Exactly, and when the Second World War ended, we recruited those German scientists into our underground society that was working with the aliens, and they helped us build all of the UFOs that we have today. And we now have a complete fleet, interstellar fleet. You would not believe what we have now that has been kept secret from everybody.
I think it would blow people's minds, absolutely, yeah.
It absolutely would. I mean, they have gone to the stars. They are capable of taking E.T. home. They can leave the planet whenever they want to. There's a moon base. There's a Mars base. It has all been kept under wraps, all been kept quiet from the average person.
Yes.
And NASA is just nothing. NASA is just a PR organization.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Yeah, they're sort of like a smokescreen, aren't they? They're
exactly right.
the front guys for the space program, but behind the scenes there's a whole nother space program that is basically top secret, and nobody will ever discuss that.
So when they hired Dr. Hynek, the public was getting concerned because they were having more and more of these experiences. And so he was hired to find a logical, astronomical reason for these sightings, like it was the swamp gas or the moon chasing Venus or a weather balloon or something other than extraterrestrials. But then he did come to realize then that many of them were extraterrestrial.
Was he the person that termed that gave the description at the Roswell crash with the weather balloon? Did he come up with that?
I'm not sure. I think he had something to do with it, yeah. I'm not sure if that was all his idea at that point. But we didn't talk a lot about Roswell. We were so busy with what was going on currently that we didn't get into a lot of the old stuff. And I thought, if one more UFO researcher talks about Roswell at these conferences, I'm going to quit the whole thing. But no, that was a very important moment in the history of this whole UFO business because the craft did crash, and they did retrieve it, and they did retrieve a live alien at that time.
Yes, yeah. Now, I wanted to also ask you about Dr. Hynek's connection with Steven Spielberg, because didn't he coin the term, first encounter, second encounter, third encounter, which, of course, Steven Spielberg's gone on to make Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and he's made that term very popular. Is that correct?
Yes, Dr. Hynek did coin those terms, and he sold that term, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, to Spielberg for $1,000.
Right.
I saw the contract, and it says that Spielberg can use that term anywhere in the universe.
Right.
He was the scientific advisor to the movie, Dr. Hynek was, and he also had a bit part at the end of the movie.
Oh, did he? I'll have to look.
Yes.
I've never noticed that.
It's on my website. If you go on my website, you can click on the Close Encounters thing, and you can see where he is in that last scene. And he thoroughly enjoyed that. He just loved the whole Hollywood scene.
Right. I mean, obviously with Dr. Hynek, he's done some amazing things, and as we were just saying, he sold the term to Steven Spielberg. Did he also sell the storyline to Spielberg? Because I always wondered where he might have got that from.
Well, he was the scientific advisor. So what I think happened was Spielberg because Spielberg was connected to the aliens also. And I think Spielberg would come up with a scenario, and then he would run it by Hynek, and Hynek would either say yes, no, maybe, or maybe you could change it to this, that, or the other. So the themes in Close Encounter, we were transferring some of our military personnel to the ship to go to another planet. That, for a long time, that has been talked about under the guise of Serpo. Serpo was the name of that, what do I want to say, that clandestine movement.
Yeah.
And I do believe that we did that. I believe that we did exchange in the past.
Right, yes. Now, also, there's also lots of information out there about the United States. I mean, everybody always uses the United States as sort of the example, but it didn't just happen in the United States. It's happened here in Great Britain and across Europe as well. But we'll use America as a case study. In terms of alien contact, there are enough people that have now come forward from the government, whistleblowers, if you may, who have stepped forward to say, that the United States government had contact with ETs and exchanged information. That was during the did it begin in the Eisenhower during his time as president? Is that correct?
Well, yes. What happened at the time of Eisenhower was that he met with the aliens and he signed a contract with them. And ever since then, they've been in cahoots, the aliens and the Americans. And it's all been underground. It's all been a part of this secret, the secret civilization that they have developed. He met with two different groups. The first group were the Nordics. Those were the tall blondes. And what Eisenhower wanted was their technology. And they refused to share it with us because they said we weren't advanced enough to use it for the good of mankind, that we would destroy ourselves. And they wanted us to detonate or to get rid of all of our nuclear warheads. And President Eisenhower was a military strategist, and he didn't think that was a very good bargain. So he said no, and then he met with the Greys from Zeta Reticuli, and he did sign a treaty with them, and he gave them, he gave them permission to abduct humans for their hybrid breeding program. And there were certain specifics, like no harm was to come to any of us, and they were to return us to the same place where they picked us up, and they were supposed to erase our memory so that we had no memory of what had happened. And then on a regular basis, the aliens were supposed to furnish MJ-12, which was this secret organization here in the United States, top secret. They were supposed to furnish them with a list of all the ones that they had abducted. So that's what happened, and that started the 60-some years that the United States and the aliens have been in cahoots. And God knows what they've developed.
Yes, absolutely.
It's all been underground, and it's all been secret, and they've funded it mainly with drug money, heroin and cocaine, and they have a $2.5 trillion budget every year for this secret outfit. So it's been absolutely an eye-opener to find these things out.
Yes. And this is what's so difficult for people to take on board because, you just do not hear this, in mainstream dialogue. They're just they are not talking.
Don't.
And any time anyone of any substance does try to bring any of these subjects up, they're quickly dismissed. The individual is basically seen as a lunatic and someone who's talking absolute nonsense. When the truth is, there are so many now military men coming forward talking about their experiences. I'll give you an example as well from our side here, Anne. I was watching the BBC Breakfast News last summer, and there was a gentleman on the show, on the breakfast show, and he had worked with our MOD, the Military of Defence here in the UK, and he was talking about the experiences that the British government have had with ETs and ET contact, and there are a certain number of files that, well, this was last year, but there were a certain amount of files that were being released into the mainstream, into the public, and basically he just sat there and said, we've had contact, they look just like us, and some of us are now trying to get the information out, and the presenters were just looking at him, just spellbound. I mean, it was too much for them to take.
I just love England because you've got all the crop circles over there.
And that's been going on for centuries, hasn't it, the crop circles? It's not really new.
Yeah, and the aliens love it over there.
Yeah.
And then there was the big Bentwaters case over there. I think that I think the aliens love the British too, because you do have a lot of activity over there.
We do, yeah.
And there are underground bases even in England that people don't know about. We've got them in Dulce, New Mexico. We've got Area 51 in Nevada, and we've also got them in Australia.
That's Pine Gap, isn't it?
Pine Gap, yes.
I've heard that that's a retreat. Is that true?
Yes, R&R retreat, I think
R&R,
it is.
yes.
Where
That's
they
what
can
Bob
go
Dean
and
says.
have a vacation, right?
It's so funny. So, okay, so we've touched on briefly on the work of Dr. Hynek, and it must have been an amazing time for you. You must have seen so many files, so much information coming through your fingertips, and so many different characters as well. Let's just move along slightly. So now let's go into your experience that you had. There's one question I did want to ask you about before we move on,
sure.
And that's the Majestic 12, because I believe you came across some information about them, didn't you, while you were working in his office?
Yes, I did. I saw a list of the names of MJ-12 in the files, and it's just amazing. There were so many of them that were top security people in the United States. These were the top military, top secret people. And, one thing we have to keep in mind is that above the President of the United States, there's about 27 levels of top secret.
That's right, yes.
So, the President doesn't know everything, and that was the whole Kennedy situation. He got wind of all of this alien stuff. So he demanded the files, and he was planning on bringing it to the attention of the general public, and that's why he was assassinated.
Yes.
And he was assassinated by a member of MJ-12.
Yes.
So, these people, these guys were just incredible, and it was President Truman that organized them first, and the purpose was to find out just what this alien agenda was all about. But then from then on, it just became more secret and more secret, and they just ran the whole show with the aliens then at that point.
Yeah, and Dr. Hynek was moving in some very high circles, obviously. I mean, did you ever feel that he feared for his life? I mean, I know, have you ever heard of Professor James McCanney? He's a scientist. He currently does a show called The Science Hour, and I believe he's a former astronomer as well. And he talks about, how manipulated the scientific community is, and how they keep the highest level scientists quiet. They pay them off, they bribe them, they blackmail them. Anything that you can think of, they do. Do you feel, or do you know if Dr. Hynek had any of those kinds of experiences? Do you think he was afraid for his life at any time?
He never told me of anything specifically, but I have the distinct feeling that he was very concerned for his life and the life of his family. And he knew that he had to toe the line or there were going to be consequences. So that's why he didn't speak out very much.
Yes.
He kept everything very close to his chest because he was there in the middle of all of it. He was the man, and I knew he was having alien experiences.
He must have had, yes.
I knew they wouldn't leave him alone because he was the guy. And I kept after him and kept saying, come on, tell me what's happening. Tell me what you know. And he wouldn't. He just would not say it. So the last time I visited him, just before he died, he looked at me very intently, and he said, I want you to know I've had my own UFO experience.
Okay, right, yes.
So that was...
so you let that one out just before you left.
I felt that was his parting gift. Yeah. So, he was... there was a certain concern that he had, that he needed to toe the line. And this is what they've done with the astronauts, the scientists, with anybody that knows anything. They've threatened them within an inch of their life. And if that wasn't keeping people in line, then they would threaten the families. And usually when your loved ones are threatened, then you're willing to do anything.
I mean, I can corroborate that. I have an uncle who was a scientist, is a scientist still, but he's no longer practicing in the scientific community. But he was recruited from this country to work abroad in America at Monsanto. And he worked in top secret, he basically worked within a top secret type program, and he never spoke about what he was doing. And only recently he's been coming out with things to the family about what he actually did, and we're finding out that he's one of the forerunners of stem cell research. And for all these years, he's kept it quiet.
He's kept it quiet.
Yeah, and that's what I always remember that growing up. My mother saying he can't speak about his work. We're not allowed to ask him any questions. And
usually it comes out when they know they're going to die. Then they'll tell it all. And this is what Ben Rich did. He was the CEO of Lockheed and Lockheed Skunk Works, and he was the one that said, we have a complete interstellar fleet. There are only two kinds of UFOs, the kind that the aliens make and the kind that we make.
Yes, yeah.
And so a lot of it. And then he also, one of his engineers also came forward and talked about the handheld scanner that they have that was alien technology, and you could you scan the body with it, and you could diagnose the disease, you could treat it, and you could cure it. Mm-hmm. We've had a cure for cancer for so many years.
Well, I have my own opinions about cancer as well, because it always seems like so many high-profile people get it at inconvenient times. I mean, Dr. Hynek died from cancer, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Yeah, he was summoned over to Edwards Air Force Base shortly after I went to work for him, and it was a secret mission. He didn't speak about it at all. Mm-hmm. He was there for the weekend and came back, and it was shortly after that he was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and all of us there in the office had a suspicion that it might have been induced. But they have ways of knocking people off.
No, I absolutely believe it. Yes, yeah.
And making it look very natural.
Natural. I mean, because I'm not sure if you're aware of Rene Rousseau, who was a film director, and he had produced a movie called From Fascism to Freedom, and it was circulated on the internet, and it was free. And I think within a year of that movie coming out, he was dead with cancer.
Yep.
So,
Do you know Dr. Stephen Greer?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, his partner in crime, the woman that did a lot of research with him from Colorado, was given breast cancer, and she died of it. Yeah. They gave him melanoma, but he was a doctor, and he caught it in time.
Right.
So, yeah. They don't rest.
No, never stops. So we've covered Dr. Alan Hynek, who's an absolutely fascinating character. We could probably speak about him all evening, but I do want to move along because I really want to make some time for a discussion about Planet X and also about this new shift in consciousness that's coming as well. I wanted you to just go through that story you were about to say before I moved you along about the ETs that visited you, the female energy that came to you.
Yes, well, I went to this conference for Dr. Hynek in Wyoming, and I was there for 4 days, and strange and psychic and unusual things were happening throughout the 4 days. But there was a ranch outside the town there of Laramie that had a history of having a lot of UFO sightings, and a story that the man, Pat McGuire, who owned the farm, was trying to drill for water, and he couldn't find water anyplace. He had brought in all kinds of companies and people to drill for it and couldn't find any water. And one day, a spacecraft landed on his property. The aliens got out, and they showed him where to drill for water. And he did, and he's had water ever since. So there's this story, and it's out there, and it's built over these ley lines. And there seems to be a window there for spacecraft to come through from another dimension. So at the conference, everybody was going out there and having experiences, and I said, well, I have to get out there. Well, to make a long story short, a couple that were helping to arrange the conference said, if you stay an extra day, we'll take you out to the ranch. So I did. We went out to the ranch, and just from the moment we stepped on the land, strange things began to happen. And finally, at one point, I was hit in the center of my forehead at the third eye with this beam of light and energy, and the energy became so intense. The light, when it first started, was pink, but then it became extremely white, just a bright, bright white, and it felt as though somebody was jamming a steel rod down the back of my neck and out my tailbone, down my spine. I was cramping. The pain was absolutely excruciating. And I was literally being forced to the ground.
Right.
And I finally, when it was over, this white light just exploded inside my head like the 4th of July sparklers. And I ended up in a heap on the ground. And I had a terrible cramp in my leg and didn't think I could get up. Well, this couple was out there with me, but they'd been doing something else, and they came running over and said, "Are you all right?" And I looked up at them, and Connie said, "My God, look at her eyes." And I have usually very blue eyes, but at that point they were bleached pure white. So I had two thoughts in my mind during that experience. One was, I'm going somewhere. I felt as though I was being lifted up off the ground, and I felt that Doug and Connie were way down there somewhere. And the second thought was, we're changing souls. And I thought, well, this is very strange. Anyway, it ends up that there's a huge lightning storm, a huge thunder and lightning and rain. We got about 25 feet and ran out of gas trying to get back to town. So there were three women in the truck that were left there for a while the guy that drove it went to get gas. And it was during that time that I was given 5 symbols. It wasn't until I got back to Phoenix that Dr. Hynek figured out that we had about 2 hours of missing time at that point. But then we eventually got back to town and into the dormitory room where I was staying, and there were the 3 of us, Doug, Connie, and myself. We had the feeling that the experience of the night was not finished, so they had decided that they would stay there. And we were just sitting around talking and having coffee, and all of a sudden, Connie's face began to change. It began to morph right there in front of us, and all of a sudden, there was this beautiful alien female being sitting right there in her place.
It's amazing.
And these eyes were incredible. They're about 3 times the size of ours, and they're perfectly round, and they're beautiful, and the love that just exudes from them, it's indescribable. You have to experience it. Well, this went on for about 3 hours, and one after another came in, and we talked and we asked questions, and then they said, we will yield now to a higher power. Well, the higher power came in, and she was very, very ancient. And I just absolutely loved her. I wanted to stay with her forever. I asked her what had happened to me out on the ranch, and she said, in your language, you would call it an initiation.
Right.
She said, you've been given higher powers or greater powers, and you will now be receiving direct communication. Well, I was just dumbfounded. Now, the tears were just streaming down my cheeks. It was such an incredible experience. And just about that time, the sun started to come up. It was 6 a.m. This had been going on since 3 a.m. in the morning, and the room at one point felt like it was just filled, just crowded with these beautiful beings. They were very regal, and they were very curious, and they each had some kind of an ornament on their head. It was just fascinating. Well, anyway, I talked to Connie, and she said that it took 3 weeks for her cheekbones to feel like they were back in the same place where they were supposed to be.
Right.
She actually morphed into those beings.
It's amazing, it really is, yeah.
So, yeah, and they're very loving, very benign. They're interdimensional and extraterrestrial. They're still in touch with me. They guide me. They see to it that I get the information I need. And also I have another guy that is not one of them. He's a praying mantis type, and he's been with me since I had the dreams in 1976. And he was the one that told me to read the book by Zecharia Sitchin.
Yes, let's get on to Planet X, because I'm aware of the time, and I really want to get into that. Yes, so let's get into that. So you read Sitchin's work. Obviously, for those that don't know about Sitchin, he is one of the few people that could actually read the Sumerian text, and he wrote a series of books, didn't he, about, this other planet, the information that the Sumerians had about this other planet, which at the beginning of the show I called Planet X, but they knew it as something else. They knew it as... I guess Nibiru, if we were to use the English dialect, I guess the sounds phonetically would come up as Nibiru. So please tell us about what you know about Nibiru, because there's lots of people talking about it, and I'm not completely convinced that all of them are talking about things that they know about.
Well, before I forget it, the one thing I want to say first is that you are going to be hearing a lot about this comet called Elenin.
Yes.
It's all over the news now.
Yeah.
And this is disinformation. This is just trying to get people off the track. So don't pay any attention to Elenin.
Right.
But Planet X is a planet that's 4 times the diameter of the Earth, and it returns every 3,600 years. It has this long elliptical orbit. And when it's in our solar system now, currently it's about a little less than halfway between us and the sun. So it's probably somewhere around 38, 40 million miles away from us right now, which is not very far. And when it passes us, it will cause a shift. It will cause a magnetic shift. It will also cause a geographical pole shift. Mm-hmm. And the Earth will actually fall over on its side at that point.
Yeah.
And at that point, it'll be about 14 million miles away from us. So it's not going to hit us, but it's coming with this huge tail. And there's this magnetic red iron oxide dust that's in the tail. And as that sweeps toward the Earth, we will become covered with that. There are moons in the tail, there are comets, there are boulders, there are all kinds of things, that fireballs that we're being pelted with currently, and that will just increase as it gets closer. This was first tracked in 1983,
yes.
So this is another government cover-up. They've known about this for 27 years.
Mm-hmm. That's
they
right.
first saw it with a telescope in 2003. Now, you can go see it yourself in the Northern Hemisphere. If you get a clear morning or a clear evening and you're up high enough, you can see 2 suns rising on the horizon. And the one on the right, at about the 4 o'clock position in front of the sun, is Nibiru. So you can see it, you can take pictures of it, and everybody should write this website down. It's ZetaTalk, ZetaTalk.com. You can find all kinds of pictures of it on ZetaTalk.
Yes, there's some amazing photos on there. I was looking on that website. I go back and forth to that website, but I was looking the other day and just looking through the archives of photos. Some of them are absolutely amazing. I hadn't realized that they had been capturing it so clearly because, as I say, there's different information going on out there. Some are saying it's going to miss us completely, and the ETs that are out there aren't going to allow it to get into our atmosphere and cause any problems.
No, that's disinformation. That's wishful thinking.
It's wishful thinking, and there are others like yourself that are being more realistic, and that's one of the things that, in the New Age community we suffer with. This, it's nice to have the love and light, but it's a bit too saccharine and sweet and not down to earth in terms of the facts and what is really going on. And there are some important things to be taking on board here. Are you aware of the work of Major Ed Dames?
Yes, I know him.
The remote viewer, Ed James worked for the United States government as part of the intelligence agency as a remote viewer. And what he has to say about all of this is he and his team, over several years, they have been going into wherever they go, the ether, and looking at the timeline to see what they can find. For example, with the Millennium Bug, they couldn't find anything. They didn't see any problem. Everybody was getting themselves all twisted up and worried about the Millennium Bug and that it was going to cause a big chaos. Well, it didn't happen, and he said it's not going to happen. So he was correct. He predicted the earthquake in Japan and also this last earthquake in Japan and also the nuclear reactor going off. So he was correct about that. Most of his predictions that he and his team make are usually about 99% correct. And what he has to say is very important. He believes that they are seeing a planetary body of some sort coming close to the sun. The time frame that he is giving is around March of 2013. By that point, we should be in our safe zones already for anything, basically. And he sees it being quite, it's going to cause a lot of devastation across the globe, and it's time to prepare yourself for now. So what would you like to add to that?
Well, I would add that I think it's going to happen before then. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to happen between now and the end of 2012. What I want the listeners to know is that you can survive this. It's going to be very devastating, but you can survive it. You need to stock up on food, water, and medical supplies. You need to move inland at least. Well, of course, in England, it's hard to get 100 miles inland. But what is your highest altitude there?
I have no idea, but I would imagine in the hills of Scotland would probably be quite safe, maybe.
Yeah, you need to be about 1,000 feet up because the tsunami that's going to hit the UK is going to be very devastating. And that's going to happen much sooner. That's going to be within the next few months. So people need to be planning now. You want to locate out of the cities. You want to think of a camping life. You want to have a garden of your own. You want to just, if it's possible for you to take a Red Cross course or a survival class, you should be doing that now.
I think yes, and I think also, you know, I would say to people as well, do your own research. There's plenty of information going on out there, but do your own research. I know a lot of the newspapers and the mainstream online media newspapers, they are at least running articles about the solar flares, the solar maximum that's going on currently, and they have warned people that it's going to get a lot more intense, and they are worried about the grid going down. So there is a lot going on, and you're not going to hear this on your television, so you really do need to inform.
I'll give you another excellent website, is www.pole, P-O-L-E, shift, S-H-I-F-T, .ning, N-I-N-G, .com.
Yep.
And that's going to give you all the information from around the world as it's happening. It's an incredible website.
Well, we're going to have you back on the show, Anne, because we've run out of time. I can't believe this hour's gone so quickly. But
well, I'm hoping to come over there in
Yes,
October.
you are. We're trying to get you over here, so hopefully maybe we might even get you back on around that time if we can make this work.
Sure.
And I just want to let the listeners know about Anne's book. It's called Dragon in the Sky, Prophecy from the Stars, and you have been listening to Anne Eller. So I want to thank you for coming on the show tonight. And your website, you want to just quickly say your website?
It's Ann, A-N-N, Eller, E-L-L-E-R.com. And I have a video up there that explains all of this, so they could go and find out a lot more.
There you go.
Well, thank you so much,
Thank you,
Valentine. I have enjoyed it.
Yeah, we'll talk soon. We're definitely going to try to get you here in October.
All right, great. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Bye.
Right, so that's the end of the show, guys.